Ma'am, with all due respect, this is a drill floor, not a library. We need leaders here, not wallflowers. The insult, sharp and loud, ricocheted off the cavernous walls of the infantry training hall. A wave of nervous snickers rippled through the 200 recruits standing in rigid formation. They followed the lead of their instructor, Sergeant Evans, a man whose voice was his primary weapon and whose confidence was built on the foundations of volume and intimidation. The target of his scorn, a civilian consultant named Anna Morgan, offered no reaction. She didn't flinch, her expression didn't shift, her posture didn't change. She simply stood, a small, unassuming figure in plain cargo pants and a simple polo shirt, a stark contrast to the crisp, decorated uniforms surrounding her. Her silence was a vacuum in the sound-filled hall, a void that seemed to unnerve Evans more than any retort could have. High above, on the glass-walled observation deck, Colonel Davies watched, his gaze fixed not on the sneering sergeant, but on the woman. He saw what the others missed, the subtle, almost imperceptible way she stood, feet shoulder-width apart, hands clasped loosely behind her back. It wasn't the posture of a civilian. It was the parade rest of a Tier 1 operator, a stance of coiled readiness so deeply ingrained it had become second nature. The colonel leaned forward slightly, his face a mask of dawning recognition. If you believe true strength doesn't need to scream, type silence in the comments below. The tension on the drill floor was thick enough to taste, a mix of stale sweat, floor polish, and the collective anxiety of young soldiers. Sergeant Evans paced before his platoon like a caged predator, his boots striking the polished concrete with aggressive, rhythmic clicks. He had been against the new civilian integration program from the start, viewing it as an intrusion of softness into his world of hard edges and absolute obedience. Anna Morgan was the embodiment of his fears, quiet, analytical, and worst of all, an outsider. He decided to make an example of her, to surgically dismantle her credibility in front of the very recruits she was meant to advise. "The brass says you're here to improve our operational efficiency," he boomed, the sarcasm dripping from every word. "They say you have a unique perspective." He stopped directly in front of her, leaning in to invade her personal space, a classic intimidation tactic that had broken countless recruits. "But here, on my floor, respect is earned. It's proven with sweat and action, not with a clipboard and a fancy degree." Morgan's eyes, a calm and steady gray, met his without wavering. She gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Her utter lack of reaction was a quiet defiance that fueled his fury. He gestured to the rifle rack. "So prove it. Show these soldiers what a real leader looks like. Lead them through the Phoenix Gauntlet." A murmur went through the ranks. The Phoenix Gauntlet was a notoriously complex exhibition drill sequence, a brutal test of memory, precision, and command authority that even seasoned NCOs struggled with. It was a public execution disguised as a demonstration. Sergeant Evans retrieved a ceremonial M1 Garand from the rack, its woodstock polished to a mirror shine, and thrust it into Anna's hands with a contemptuous smirk. "Don't drop it, ma'am. It's heavier than it looks." The challenge was set, the audience captive. Anna took the rifle, but the way her hands closed around the weapon sent the first tremor of doubt through the room. It wasn't the awkward fumbling of a civilian. Her grip was instinctive, her fingers finding their place with an easy familiarity. She brought the 8-pound rifle up, not to her shoulder, but held it perfectly balanced in front of her, testing its weight and distribution with a series of small, economical movements. The metallic clicks of the rifle's components were the only sounds in the suddenly hushed hall. She didn't inspect the weapon, she communed with it. Her movements were a silent language of expertise, a practiced ballet of muscle memory that spoke more eloquently than any boast. The recruits, who had been expecting a spectacle of failure, now watched with a dawning sense of confusion and awe. The smirks faded from their faces, replaced by wide-eyed curiosity. Evans himself felt a cold prickle of uncertainty. This was not the timid academic he had pegged her for. This was something else entirely. Something he hadn't prepared for. Anna Morgan walked to the center of the floor, the rifle held at a perfect port arms. She turned to face the formation, her posture immaculate. The silence stretched, becoming a tangible presence, a heavy blanket over the hall. Then she spoke. Her voice wasn't a shout. It wasn't the guttural roar of a drill sergeant. It was calm, clear, and projected with a chilling authority that cut through the air like a surgeon's scalpel. Platoon. 10 HUT. The command was so pure, so perfectly timed, that 200 pairs of boots struck the concrete as a single, explosive crack of thunder. The recruits themselves seemed surprised by the violence and unity of their own reaction. Before they could process it, the next command came, and the next. Anna began calling the Phoenix Gauntlet, a dizzying, 17-phase sequence of movements, entirely from memory. Right shoulder, ARMS. Order, ARMS. Inspection, ARMS. Her voice was the steady rhythm, the metronome against which the platoon moved. She didn't just call the drill. She performed it with them, a flawless shadow moving at the front of the formation. Her rifle became a blur of polished wood and steel, spinning, snapping, and freezing in place with impossible precision. The final phase, a complex ripple toss from the front rank to the back, was executed with a perfection that bordered on the supernatural. The sequence ended with a final, earth-shattering stomp as the last rifle was caught, and the entire platoon snapped back to attention. Then, the silence returned, absolute and deafening. Sergeant Evans stood frozen, his face pale with shock. That's not possible," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "That was the Serpent Weave. We retired that sequence 20 years ago. No one even remembers it." The heavy doors at the far end of the hall swung open, and the measured footsteps of Colonel Davies echoed in the stunned silence. He walked with a purpose that commanded attention, his eyes locked on Anna Morgan. He strode past the shell-shocked Sergeant Evans as if he were a piece of furniture, not even granting him a sideways glance. He stopped directly in front of Anna, his expression a mixture of profound respect and something akin to nostalgia. The colonel turned his head slightly, addressing the entire room, but his words were clearly aimed at the disgraced drill sergeant. "You are correct, Sergeant." His voice boomed with the quiet authority of high command. "We did retire that sequence. We retired it because after its creator left the service, no instructor in the entire armed forces could master it, let alone teach it. We deemed it unattainable." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle into the minds of every soldier present. He then turned his full attention back to the unassuming woman standing before him, whose breathing hadn't even quickened. The silence was broken by the sharp, clean sound of the colonel's heels clicking together as he snapped into the most rigid and formal salute of his long and decorated career. It was a gesture of deep, personal reverence, one a colonel typically reserved for a fallen hero or a Medal of Honor recipient. "Master Chief Petty Officer Morgan," he said, his voice filled with an unwavering respect that stunned the recruits into stone. "It is a profound honor to have you on our drill floor." The rank hung in the air, an impossible truth that reordered the reality of everyone in the hall. "Master Chief," a senior enlisted rank of immense prestige, rarely achieved, and almost unheard of for a woman in the circles this rank implied. The name, Morgan, suddenly clicked into place for the colonel and for the history buffs in the room. He didn't need to see a file. He was looking at a living legend. But the narrator's voice fills in the details that a formal record would hold, a staccato list of impossible achievements. Name, Anna Morgan. Rank, Master Chief Petty Officer, E9. Service, United States Navy, 22 years. Last billet, Operator, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Call sign, Echo. Lead instructor for advanced marksmanship, close quarters combat, and ceremonial drill standards for the Joint Chiefs. 12 combat deployments. The Navy Cross for actions in the Hindu Kush. A Silver Star. 3 Bronze Stars, all with valor. The list went on, a litany of heroism and quiet professionalism documented in files so heavily redacted they were more black ink than white paper. She was a ghost, a myth whispered about in the barracks of SEAL teams, the kind of operator whose very existence was a classified secret. And she had just been publicly mocked by a drill sergeant for being a wallflower. The irony was so thick it was suffocating. The story of what happened on Morgan's floor spread through the base not like wildfire, but like a shockwave. It traveled through text messages, hushed conversations in the mess hall, and late-night talks in the barracks. The narrative was simple and devastatingly effective. The quiet civilian consultant wasn't just a veteran. She was the architect of the very standards they struggled to meet. She was the ghost from the history books. For the recruits who had witnessed it, the event was formative. They no longer saw drill as a pointless exercise in discipline. They saw it as an art form, a physical expression of the quiet perfection that defined a true warrior. They practiced harder, their movements sharper, their focus absolute. The entire culture of the training battalion began to shift, moving away from loud intimidation and toward a deep, abiding respect for demonstrated competence. The change was most visible in Sergeant Evans. He was a man humbled to his very core, his entire professional identity shattered and then rebuilt on a new foundation. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a quiet intensity. He drilled his platoons with a newfound purpose, his voice no longer a roar but a precise instrument of instruction. The mythology of Anna Morgan had begun, her name now a byword for the idea that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one you notice least. The next morning, Sergeant Evans found Master Chief Morgan in the mess hall, sitting alone and nursing a cup of black coffee. He approached her table, not with a swagger, but with a palpable sense of humility. In full view of 100 soldiers, he stopped and snapped to a rigid position of attention. "Master Chief," he began, his voice clear and steady, devoid of its previous bluster. "Yesterday, I was unprofessional. I was ignorant. And I was wrong. My conduct was inexcusable." He paused, swallowing his pride. "I apologize, and I would consider it an honor if you would agree to instruct my instructors, to teach us what we've clearly forgotten." The entire mess hall had fallen silent, watching the drama unfold. Anna Morgan looked up from her coffee, her calm gray eyes studying him for a long moment. There was no triumph in her expression, no satisfaction, only a quiet assessment. She didn't lecture him or relish his apology. Her quiet competence had no need for such things. She simply gave another one of her small, efficient nods. "All right, Sergeant," she said, her voice even. "My schedule is clear. We'll start tomorrow. 0500. Be ready." With that, she returned to her coffee, the matter closed. Her work was not about winning arguments or shaming the arrogant. It was about making soldiers better. The lesson was over, the training was about to begin. 6 months passed. A new energy coursed through the infantry school. The base's drill teams, once merely competent, were now winning national championships, their performances lauded for a level of precision and synchronicity that seemed almost inhuman. They moved with the silent, fluid grace of their new mentor. The story of the day the Master Chief took the floor had become required listening for every new recruit, a piece of institutional folklore taught on the first day of basic training. It served as a permanent, powerful lesson about the danger of assumptions and the virtue of humility. The legend wasn't just about a single, perfect drill sequence. It was about a fundamental shift in understanding what true strength looked like. It wasn't loud. It wasn't arrogant. It was calm. It was methodical, and it was devastatingly competent. Sergeant Evans became Morgan's most devoted protege and a fierce advocate for the new culture, often telling new NCOs, "The loudest person in the room is simply revealing their position. Learn to listen to the silence. That's where the real power is." The legacy of that day was not etched onto a plaque or a monument. It was imprinted onto the very character of the institution. It lived in the sharp snap of a salute, in the focused gaze of a young soldier on the firing line, and in the quiet confidence of instructors who now taught by example, not by intimidation. Anna Morgan remained a consultant, her official title never changing. She never spoke of her past, never wore her medals, and never raised her voice. She didn't have to. Her presence was a constant reminder that true authority is not seized, but granted. It is the natural result of proven worth. Her story became a quiet anthem for the silent professionals of the world, for the masters of their craft who let their actions speak for them. It was a testament to the enduring truth that a legacy is not built by the noise you make, but by the standards you set and the competence you embody. True greatness does not need to announce itself. It is simply recognized by those wise enough to see it. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud assumption and where silent discipline defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Tales.